What's going on, Dolphins? It is your boy Dillon, and I am here to finally start my off-season videos. This one actually is not going to be, directed towards the actual free agents, though. Like I said, in one of my previous videos, I'm starting off by doing a deep dive into the players that we have on the roster. So the way I'm going to do this is today, this actually should be a pretty quick, relatively short video overall, but I'm going to do a deep dive into each of the players that the Dolphins have currently on the offensive line. Tomorrow, I will be doing a video of free agents available that are for the offensive tackle position. And then the next day will be right tackle, and then the next day will be left tackle and center. I didn't look at any guards because, again, my opinion of the situation is that we don't really need to go after a guard either in the draft or free agency. The reason why is because I think right guard is perfectly well manned with Robert Hunt, and then you have Austin Jackson, Michael Dieter, Solomon Kinley, and Liam Eichenberg, 4 guys that you drafted, and some in the, early rounds that can fight for that last spot and should be able to at least man it, reasonably well if you do what is necessary in free agency to address the offensive line, which to me, my philosophy would be, and my approach would be, again, spend buku dollars on the right tackle, get Tua's blind side locked up with a premier guy, and then, spend whatever you need to on a left tackle and or a center, right? So either get one of those two positions or both of them in free agency. I would be fine with both of them. You don't necessarily even need to spend buku dollars on those guys, but, you can get decent players, decent veteran guys, because again, one of the biggest issues, and we're going to see it as we go through this video with the offensive line, is young, inexperienced guys that have no idea what they're doing, etc. Now, our coaching staff theoretically should be better and should be able to get more out of them, but you still need those veteran leaders, those generals on the field, the guys that can help them, play in, play out, and everything, so on and so forth. So, and who have been around and done it before, right? So, and honestly, if you wanted to even leave Michael Dieter at center, then maybe you prioritize, and this is not a bad idea, right? Maybe you prioritize your tackles in free agency if you're only going to get 2 out of 3 of those offensive linemen. Again, for me, I would go, because there's a couple centers that you're going to see that I would go ahead and spend some money on one of those guys too, veteran guys. Now, they're not going to be here for long, but what it does is it not only addresses one of the biggest issues of the lack of veteran leadership in there and the experience, but then it gives you stopgap guys that can, one, help you right now, but then they can also help this new coaching staff, new coaching line, help to develop these young players. And then over the next couple years, it buys you a couple years. So that way, because you can give these guys like maybe 2 or 3 year contracts, and it'll buy you a couple years. So that way, then you can draft some guys over the next few years with the draft capital that we have that we're going to keep, because we're not going to trade for one of those top quarterbacks. And then, those veteran guys can help those new young guys develop and so on and so forth too. So, and again, I would take an offensive lineman, even if I did get all 3 of those, even if I did get a premier right tackle and a solid left tackle and center in free agency, I would still take a 3rd or 4th round offensive lineman to put into the mix. So, anyway, let's go ahead and pop over now, because like I said, I have been, over the past week and a half, I have been doing so much work, and you're going to get just a tiny little glimpse of it today when I do this deep dive into the Dolphins' current roster and who we have to work with as of right now. There's a lot of information that went into all this, and so we're going to take a look at it. I hope you guys like it. The first thing I want to note, though, is my position rankings by need. This is how I list it. So, and as you'll see, there are some positions that are left out. Like I don't have guard on here. Quarterback is only on here because we need a backup. Obviously, specialists, like who really needs them? And I'm not really the kind of person that likes to draft them anyway. I like to, unless you think you're going to get a Justin Tucker in like the 5th or 6th round or something like that. I usually like to leave that as undrafted guys, but we do need a punter. But anyway, so first, my top need as of right now is offensive line. You need tackles and a center, both tackles and a center. Then you need running back at number 2. Wide receiver is the 3rd highest priority. Linebacker is 4, but not the entire unit, just a true middle. So we have guys like Andrew Van Ginkel and Landon Roberts and Jerome Baker who are good outside guys who can blitz and are good in those roles, right? They're good at chasing down guys to get tackles and make sure the ball carrier gets down, those sorts of things. But we need a true middle linebacker that's going to control that, you know, the middle of that defense. He's going to call out the plays to the guys. He's going to get guys lined up. He's going to be better in the run than what, you know, some of these other guys are, because like Baker constantly gets washed out in run plays and stuff. And, you know, Landon Roberts is kind of hit and miss. So, you know, true middle linebacker, it's not the entire unit, right? But that's why for me, my dream scenario would be if we could somehow get Nakobe Dean at 29 in the 1st round and then get one of those top running backs in the 2nd round and then a wide receiver or offensive lineman in the 3rd round, but after having addressed offensive line and free agency the way I want to do, bro, we could knock out the first 4 of these would be addressed like, you know, just like that. If they do it how I would do it, you know, I think that we would knock off these top 4. And then after that, bro, like, you're actually pretty good overall. Because then the rest of the defense is basically pretty good. Need at tight end's not really that big as long as, like, I think that they need to find a way to keep Gesicki at least for this year, even if it's franchise tag, but that hasn't happened yet. So, you know, we'll see how it plays out. Anyway, but then defensive line, the reason why I have edge over tackle is because I do think now we'll have to wait and see how some of that plays out. Do they give Christian Wilkins his 5th-year option? But I do like our interior guys, and I do like our tackles overall. Especially with that rotation with like John Jenkins, Adam Butler, and some of those other guys backing up Raekwon Davis and Christian Wilkins. But we only have really 2 edge rushers, and I'm not talking about the linebackers and the safeties that are constantly used in blitz packages. I'm talking about true edge rushers. We have Ogba and Phillips. And Ogba may or may not be here this upcoming season, right? So that's why edge for sure is over tackle. And honestly, some of these priorities could change depending on who they end up keeping or letting walk, or, you know, what they do in free agency, et cetera, et cetera. So, and then cornerback. Now, again, if you ended up losing one of, or both of your top corners, then that would change the priorities list a bit. But right now, I think we're good there. Tight end, safety, we got young safeties. You know, you look at, I mean, tight end, you got Gesicki, Smythe, Adam Shaheen. You got a good, solid stable of guys there that if they can just keep those guys, I think they're fine. That doesn't, and then Hunter Long, you got the young draft pick that you just took this past year, right? So I think you're pretty solid there. Then safety with the 2 young corners. I would like to see them at least keep like one of the veterans, either Eric Rowe or McCourty. You can let the other one go. I'd say I'd probably keep Eric Rowe and have those as my 3 guys, and then maybe bring in some young blood, you know, in the back end of the draft, or, you know, as undrafted players or in free agency or whatever. And then, you know, backup quarterback and specialist punters. So I honestly, you know my philosophy, I would take a quarterback every year in rounds 3 or later. So I wouldn't mind seeing them take a young quarterback in, you know, round 4 or 5 or something like that as a developmental prospect. Maybe he ends up on the practice squad, or maybe he plays well enough to be your backup. But at least there's competition there, and you drafted a young, you know, guy, and maybe, you know, if he turns out to be solid, but not like what you're looking for, then maybe you can trade him away later on for draft capital, right? to another team that might wanna see what they can get from him. But I would like to probably see them pick up somebody as a free agent, so get a little bit of veteran leadership there. We'll get to quarterbacks because that's obviously down on the list, and then specialists wouldn't even be on this list if it wasn't for punter, that we need a punter. And you could say return specialist too. We need a guy that can return, but I think we got guys on the roster, even if you leave like Waddle off that list, for example. I mean, technically Holland can too, although I would leave him off that list. But you have Noah, who isn't doing fucking jack shit for you. Put him back there, right? Lynn Bowden should be coming back this year. So there are options there, and it's not the highest need, certainly not with the rest of this. So this is my position rankings by need as it stands right now. So let's start breaking down now the Dolphins offensive line, and this is just in order of how they, like when I went to the Dolphins roster, I clicked the position, so that way it put them in order of position so I could find them easier, and obviously it put them in alphabetical order, so depending on, like, Dieter was listed as a center guard, so he was at the top of the list. So it's just in order of that, nothing special or whatever. Anyway, this wasn't supposed to be in. No. Okay, so now let's take a look at this. So we have Michael Dieter. As you guys know, I haven't been a super big fan of his. He was complete trash in year one. He's moved around a lot, kind of, sort of, maybe found a home at center this year, but long way to go. But he is one of the only pieces that I do find to be really salvageable, and that's why I think if he's not going to be at center this year, I think he and like Liam Eichenberg should be in the mix. And I mean, sure, Austin Jackson, whatever, he's a first round pick, he's got the athleticism, and he did better as guard than he did as a left tackle, not that he did very good. But I think he's salvageable, and let's see what this new, but battle it out for left guard or whatever. He's going into his fourth year. Obviously, he's got the 3 years of experience, 3 years in the league. He's 25. By the way, real quick, just so you know, current APY, that's current average per year, but it's also, this section is also for current cap hit. That's what I titled it, current AP year. So if they have a cap hit for this upcoming season, that's what I put. Otherwise, it's their most recent average per year. Like if they don't have a cap hit, if they're a free agent or something like that, whatever. So, and obviously he's still on a rookie deal. So, same thing with Liam Eichenberg and Austin Jackson. They're still all on rookie deals. Although Austin Jackson is on the more expensive rookie deal because he was a first round pick, but still pretty cheap, right? And see what this new coaching staff can do with him. I'm not going to really worry, I'm not going to mention this stuff, although I did want to have this information in my videos and in my breakdowns. I'm not really going to, when it comes to draft prospects, we'll go through their measurables and combine scores and stuff like that, but I'm not going to worry about that for the current players or the free agents. I'm not going to talk about it, but it is here in the video so you can see it. Draft status, obviously, 3rd round, 78th overall in 2019. 3 years in the league. Miami Dolphins has been his only team from 2019 to present. His career stats, he's got 40 games, 23 started, so a little over half. 1,565 snaps, 521.7 per year. He's got 7 sacks allowed, 2.3 per year. Penalties, 8 with 2.7 per year. But obviously he hasn't played a ton. Like last year, he only played 23 snaps. Even this year or 2019, he played the most snaps, 996. But if you're a full-time starter, now he did have some injuries this year too, so that is part of the equation for him. But if you're a full year starter, just for a point of reference, you should break 1,000 snaps, right? So if you play a full 16, now 17 game schedule and you play every snap of every game, you should pretty easily get to about 1,000 snaps. And he was close to that in 2019. Now, Obviously, in 2021, he played 8 games, started each one of those games, 546 snaps, only allowed 1 sack and 3 penalties. So he was one of the better offensive linemen that we had when he was out there. And again, he showed some promise at center, so it's not an unreasonable thing for me. So like, let's say you get a premier right tackle, you get a solid veteran left tackle, and then you have Robert Hunt at right guard. I like those three. I mean, obviously it depends who you get at right tackle, but I'm assuming right and left tackle, but I'm assuming you're going to get a good player. So, and then Robert Hunt at right guard, Dieter at center, and then let those other guys battle it out for left guard. I don't hate that. I would prefer to still get that veteran center just so that way 4 out of 5 of your offensive linemen should be good and solid and ready to go, as opposed to 3 and you're hoping that 2 of them are going to be all right. So, you know, but anyway, his pro football focus grades. Now, real quick, just about the grades. I only have the base level membership. I'm thankful to have that, but I do only have the base level membership. So there is a lot of stuff, the elite statistics. There's a lot of even further depth information that I don't have, but it's the base package is good enough to get me a lot of really the fundamental information that I need. So, and by the way, also take these PFF grades with a grain of salt, because they can be kind of wonky and not make a lot of sense sometimes. So, but it is data points to have in there, and people do use them a lot. So I figured I would as well. And by the way, I did color code it a little bit. Obviously, like, red is the worst, orange is bad, yellow is like average, green is good, and then blue actually, which you'll see later on, is like elite status. If you get blue, you're elite status. So anyway, his grades and stuff, in 546 snaps in 2021, he had a 60.6 overall, 57.2 pass blocking, and a 61.7 run blocking. 23 snaps in 2020, with a 46.1 overall, 77.2 pass blocking, so he did get a pretty good grade there, although again with only 23 snaps, so the context is important, and a 45.2 run blocking. And then you look at 909. Now, granted, he was a rookie in 2019, so that is also, you know, fair to point out, but in 996 snaps, he had a red pass blocking grade of 37.8, 42.5 overall, 45.5 run blocking. All right, moving on. We now have Robert Jones. By the way, he actually is an intriguing young prospect. And again, right, like another guy that can maybe battle it out for a guard position, that left guard position. And he did. Now, he is more of a right guard as far as I know and as I can tell, but he is young. He is cheap. He was an undrafted guy in 2021, right? He's only in his second year. He's 23 years old. These are his measurables and pro day scores, et cetera, but he's an intriguing guy, and early on in the preseason this last year, he showed some Mauler grit, bro, and so he could be a guy that maybe battles it out. You do gotta acclimate him to the left side if you're gonna move him to left guard, but he certainly, I think, could have the ability and the athleticism and stuff to play it, and could certainly be better than some of these other guys that we have. Now, it would be a disappointment if you were to cut an Austin Jackson or, you know, a Solomon Kinley or whatever, especially Austin Jackson because he was a first-round pick, but it could end up happening, right? So anyway, Robert Jones, he's got 1 year in the league. He's been with the Dolphins the entire time. He's got 8 games he's played in, only started 1, 79 snaps, 79 per year, 1 sack allowed, 1 sack per year. Obviously, he's only got the 1 year. And obviously, oh, by the way, 2021 stats, if I put the players' 2021 stats in green, it's because that means they either tied or set a career best. Now, I say career best because it's not necessarily a career high, because depending on the stat, the category, lower is what you want, right? Sacks, for example, for a quarterback, the least amount of time that quarterback was sacked in his career would be a career best, right? Anyway, so 8 games, 1 started, 79 snaps, 1 sack allowed. Obviously didn't play very much. 79 snaps this year in total. PFF grades for this year, 63.6 overall, 55.4 pass blocking, and a 64.3 run blocking. Then you have Solomon Kinley. He's in his 3rd year. He's 24 with a, again, cheap cap hit because he's still on a rookie deal. He apparently, he didn't have a pro day or, combine. Obviously, the 2020 year that made it very difficult. So, unfortunately, a lot of players that came out in that time period don't really have stuff that year in particular, right? But it is what it is, right? But cheap guy, and I think that he does show potential, especially at that guard position. And in run blocking. So, again, left guard, man, there's some competition between. So if you were to have, let's say, Solomon Kinley, Eichenberg, and even and if you kept Dieter at center, right? And if you had Solomon Kinley, Robert Jones, and Eichenberg battling out for that left guard, I'd feel all right about that. Anyway, draft status, round 4, 111 overall in 2020, 2 years in the league, all of which is obviously with Miami. Career stats, 29 games, 15 started, 872 total snaps, 436 per year, 4 sacks allowed, 2 sacks per year, 6 penalties, and 3 penalties per year. In 2021, he tied a career best. I believe it was tied. It might have been setting with 16 games played, but not with the games started because obviously he played more in 2020 than he did in 2021. He had a career best in penalties, least amount of penalties in his 2 years so far with 124 snaps this year. An overall of 57.5 overall, and a 38.2 pass blocking, but with a 66 run blocking. So a little bit of mixed results there. He was consistent in the orange in 2020, obviously not very good. 748 snaps, 51.3 overall, 54.1 pass blocking, and a 50.4 run blocking. Then you have Jesse Davis, who, again, I mean, I'm getting a buku fucking right tackle in free agency anyway, so he can, kick rocks. And I mean, I wouldn't mind him as like a 6th or 7th guy, as a swing guy to just bring in case of emergency. But even still at this point, and with all the young guys that you have on this roster and all the draft picks and stuff you spent, honestly, bro, and especially if you do go get that premier tackle in free agency to give you another couple years, Jesse Davis can go. You can save that $4.6 million. He's 30 years old. He's been battling injuries, especially recently. He's in his 8th year, blah, blah, blah. These are some of his measurables, pro day scores, whatever. He was undrafted in 2015, 7 years in the league. Started out in 15 with the Seahawks, 16 Jets. Didn't do anything with them, though. And then he's been with the Dolphins ever since. Career stats, 80 games, 72 started, 4,761 total snaps, 680.1 per year, 22, and remember, full-time starter, for point of reference, for an entire season should get about 1,000 or so snaps. 22 sacks allowed, 3.14 per year. Now, to be fair and to be clear, though, this is a per year basis for every year that he's been in the league. Now, I'm telling you this because it does skew these stats a little bit. If I were to take out the first 2 years, 2015 and 16, where he didn't do anything, because as you can see here, he didn't play any snaps whatsoever in those years. If I were to take those out, then his sacks per year would be I think it went up to 4.4. Okay, because that you would chop 2 years off and then you would divide 22 by 5 instead of 7. But going into this, because I was still figuring a lot of things out and how I wanted to do it. So I just did consistently across the board for all players, all positions. I just divided their career stats by how many years they've been in the league. And generally speaking, I think that's probably the most accurate way to do it. But I did want to explain that just so you guys know. Penalties, 19, 2.7 per year. Obviously, again, that would go up a little bit. If it would be closer to 4, if little under 4, if it was 5 years instead of 7 years, right? So he set a career best of set or tied career bests in games and games played and games started with 17 and 16 respectively, and 1,063 snaps this year was the most that he's ever played. And again, if you're a full-time starter, which he never came off the fucking field last year, you're going to get to about 1,000 snaps or so. He had 8 sacks and 4 penalties as well. Obviously not great. So looking at his grades in 2021, in those 1,063 snaps, he had a 52.5 overall, 51.1 pass blocking, and a 51.4 run blocking grade. Now, if I did have the elite package of PFF, then maybe I could give you guys like the pass block win rate as well and the run block win rate as well, which are different statistics. But anyway, in 2020 on 1,055 snaps, he was a little bit better, although not much. He had a 62.6 overall, a 62.1 pass blocking, and a 58.6 run blocking in 975 snaps in 2019. And as you can see, each year that he's played, he has increased his snaps by a little bit. And it was a drastic jump up from 16 to 17. But anyway, in the 975 snaps he played in 2019, 58.9 overall, 59.6 pass blocking, 53.6 run blocking. You could say he had his best year in 2018 when it came to his grades, though, right? Because he at least got 1 green. Although I guess the argument for 2020 could be made too, because he's got 2 yellows and 1 orange as opposed to the 2 orange here. Anyway, whatever. 921 snaps in 2018, a 59.2 overall, 69.3 pass blocking, and a 55 run blocking. In 747 snaps in 2017, he had a 53.7 overall, 55.6 pass blocking, and a 50 run blocking. And then obviously his first 2 years, 15 and 16, he didn't play at all. Robert Hunt, who again I think currently is our best offensive lineman and should slot into that right guard position. He's in his 3rd year. He's 25. He's cheap on a rookie deal. He came in as a 2nd round pick in 39th overall in 2020. By the way, I just want to say too, one of the things that I loved about this process is I'm learning so much about all these different players. You know, not just for the Dolphins, but for, you know, all these different players, free agents and stuff across the league, right? There's so much information to be had here that it's awesome. I love it. I love all of the data. And, you know, now I also have records of it so I can, you know, I can take a look at it whenever I want to. But so much, and it's fascinating too, because one of the things that I noticed is, man, it's just fascinating how many ways there are to build a human being, right? And what I mean by that is obviously we all look different and stuff, but like when you take in their measurables, their pro day scores, combine scores, their draft status, their years in the league, the teams they played with, their career stats, their grades, all of that stuff, right? Like you're never going to get 2 players that are exactly the same, right? You're never going to get 2 players that have the exact same rundown through all of this stuff. So all the different ways to design a human being, nature designs human beings, is just fascinating. And then obviously the way that they grow and develop as human beings throughout their lives. So anyway, career stats, he's got 33 games played, 28 started, 1,875 snaps, 937 and a half per year, 5 sacks allowed, 2.5 per year, 15 penalties, 7.5 per year. So he does have some things to clean up. Obviously some of that was a result of the terrible coaching and, you know, the shit offensive line play around him. But, you know, definitely still has some things to clean up. Did set or tie career bests in 2021 in all these categories, though. 17 games played, 17 started, 1,153 snaps, only 2 sacks allowed, and 7 penalties. When it comes to his grades, look, he's got pretty damn good grades, right, for his first 2 years in the league. And again, he is our best offensive lineman. So in those 1,153 snaps last year, he had a 67.4 overall, 68.3 pass blocking, and a 65.6 run blocking. By the way, it's kind of rough, but the way I kind of came up with these is because on PFF, when they give these grades, they are actually color-coded by them as well. So I tried to keep it and matched up as closely to their color code. And it's all the same colors. That's where I got their colors, although most of them are pretty obvious as which, you know, what you're going to choose. But I tried to keep it as closely as I could to their color coding grades, or whatever. But just to give you an idea, so an 83 grade or above is going to be considered elite, and it's going to be in blue. An 82.9 all the way down to, what is it, a 65.1 is considered green. 60 to 65 I have is yellow. It's a small window. Let's see, 59.9 all the way down to 40 is orange, and then everything below 40 is red. Just to throw that in there. All right, Austin Jackson. I don't remember if I read off his grades, but whatever. For 2020, I don't think I did. 722 snaps, a 65.8 overall, 65.2 pass blocking, and a 74 run blocking. All right, now we get to the train wreck that has been Austin Jackson. He's in his third year, going into his third year. He is only 22. He's young, still on a relatively cheap contract. But as you can see, out of all of these guys that are on rookie deals, he is the most expensive because he was the highest draft pick and a first round selection. First round, 18th overall, 2020, 2 years in the league, all-time with the Dolphins. He's got 30 games played, 28 started, 1,944 snaps in total, 972 per year. Sacks allowed, 6 with 2 per year. I feel like this can't be right. His sacks allowed. Although, to be fair, if I was to get into like the pressures, that's another in-depth stat that I don't have access to because I only have the base package. But he was one of the, league leaders or top 10 in pressures allowed, which is different from sacks. Pressures and sacks are different, as well as quarterback hits. They're all different statistics. But, and they do, like a sack is also a quarterback hit. Right? But like a quarterback hit is generally where the quarterback gets hit legally. So, not a penalty, but he gets hit after he's thrown the ball, right? Or as he's throwing the ball. So it doesn't count as a sack, right? Anyway, but these are what, Pro Football Focus has for his sacks allowed to this point, which isn't very high, but I feel like this can't be right because, in 2021, they have him as only allowing 2 sacks. I don't think that's right. There's got to be something wrong there, but that's what they have, so that's what I'm going to give you. He does have 17 penalties. This seems a bit more accurate, though. 8.5 per season. Anyway, so then for 2021, he, set or matched career bests in games played with 17 games started, 16, 1,096 snaps this year, 2 sacks, but the 12 penalties was not a career best. Obviously, because then he only had 5 the year before, being that he has 17 total. Anyway, for 2 years. His PFF grades in 2021 on those 1,096 snaps, a 49.9 overall, 49.1 pass blocking, and a 54.8 run blocking. And 848 snaps in 2020, he had a 52.3 overall, 53.3 pass blocking, and a 49.5 run blocking. Then we have Greg Mance. He's got 8 years. He's going into his 8th year. He is also an unrestricted free agent. He's 29. He is cheap, though, really cheap. Here's his information. Oh, wait. I'm sorry. This was all supposed to get cut out because there was no information to be had. Anyway, so this is his information from, Combine, Pro Day, measurables, etc., etc. Draft status, he was undrafted in 15. He's got 7 years in the league. Started out his first couple years with the Texans. Then he's been with the Dolphins ever since. He's got 63 games, 32 started. So right around half of his total games played, 2,391 total snaps, 341.6 per year, 8 sacks allowed, 1.1 per year, 5 penalties, and 0.7 per year. Let's see. So, but obviously his snap counts have been very low overall, so except for this 1 year. So obviously it's all super important context because you might look at some of this and be like, oh, well, he only allows 1 sack per year and barely has any penalties. Yeah, but he's also barely even played, right? So you got to balance that out. And this is why nuance and detail is super important, right? Anyway, 2021 stats, he did set or match a career best in penalties with none, although he only played 185 snaps, right? but he had, and 5 games, only started for 185 snaps, 1 sack, right? So that kind of explains it a little bit. Not a very large sample size. And in those 185 snaps, his grades weren't very good. It's 61.9 overall, 62.7 pass blocking, 59.6 run blocking. He had 1 snap in 2020, didn't even get a pass blocking grade, and was a 60 overall and a 60 in run blocking. He had 157 snaps in 2019, 56.9 overall, 63.8 pass blocking, 55.1 run blocking. 368 snaps in 2018. Now, you could say this was one of his better years, but he also didn't play a lot, right? He had a 67.6 overall, a 69.8 pass blocking, and a 65 run blocking. And then in 560 snaps in 2017, 57.1 overall, 48.5 pass blocking, 58.1 run blocking. But you also look at the 1,119 snaps that he had in 2016, and this was definitely his best year because he had a 77.4 overall, a green, an 84.6 pass blocking, which raises into the elite category, and then a 71.3 run blocking, which is also a green score. And then 1 snap in 2015, didn't even get a run blocking grade, 71 pass blocking, and a 60 overall. Again, how does it work out like that? I don't know. But honestly, the individual scores probably have a lot more in-depth data too, to be fair, but their scores can be a little wonky at times. All right, Larnell Coleman, guy we just drafted this past year. He's going into his second year. He's 23. Obviously super cheap because he was a 7th round pick and he's still on a rookie deal. He was 232 overall in 2021. He's got 1 year in the league. Obviously with Miami, didn't have any snaps. He was put on injured reserve before the season even started, so he was on the injured reserve list the entire year and didn't play. Obviously didn't get any grades. We don't really know, but there were rumblings way back when in, the preseason that if he didn't get injured or stashed away on injured reserve, that they probably would have just likely ended up cutting him. So we'll see how that turns out. Then we get Liam Eichenberg, but as you can see, again, all super young guys. What we're missing here is veterans. That's what, and also, quality players at these positions. But one of the primary and the biggest things is veteran leadership and experience. Anyway, Liam Eichenberg going into his second year. He's 24, still a pretty cheap, rookie contract. These are his measurables and stuff and what scores he had from his pro day. He was round 2, 48 overall, 2021. Now, again, man, I wouldn't have moved up for him. I would have stayed pat at 50. They could have got Creed Humphrey, who was one of the best centers this past year and would have been a staple and a stalwart and a, long-term player for you at the center position. They could have gotten Quinn Miners at this position if they wanted to as well. They could also got Quinn Miners in the spot where they took Hunter Long. So, it is what it is. It's just what we got to deal with. He's obviously been with Miami the entire time. He's got 17 games played, 16 started, 1,108 snaps in total, also per year. He's obviously got the 1 year. 9 sacks allowed, though, 10 penalties. Obviously, that's not good. Set career bests this year, obviously, because it's his 1 year, 17 games, 16, blah, 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 all of that stuff. And then his grades, not very good in his 1,108 snaps. He was a 50.8 overall, a 46.9 pass blocking, and a 57.9 run blocking. So there you have it. Greg Little, 4th year, 24, pretty cheap contract, but, whatever. I was not in favor of wasting a 7th round pick on him, but I don't make those decisions. He was drafted in the second round, 37th overall in 2019, 3 years in the league by the Panthers. That's where he started out. And then he's been in Miami from 21 to present, 19 to 20 with the Panthers. He's got 14 career games played, 6 started, 358 snaps, 119.3 per year, 3 sacks allowed, 1 per year, 4 penalties, 1.3. Didn't play any snaps this year, so he doesn't get any grades. Obviously hasn't played really much anything. no, the Panthers, we haven't figured that he's been good enough to get on the field, right? So 2020 had 134 snaps, 44.1 overall, 25.4 pass blocking, and a 66.2 run blocking. And 224 snaps in 19, he had a 52.7 overall, a 59.8 pass blocking, and a 48.7 run blocking. Woo! Here we go. All right, moving on. We're almost done, though. We only got a couple guys left. Adam Pankey, he's going into his 6th year. Stanky Pankey, he sucks. He can bite the dust. Not like in the traditional sense, but like kick rocks anyway, right? Get out of here. He is 28 too, right? So he's old. He is cheap, but not very good. He can fuck off, and, we're probably going to bring in new guys. He's a guy that we can, he can be some savings. It's not much, but he can be some savings that we can take away because we're going to address this position. Draft status, undrafted in 17, 5 years in the league. Started out with the Packers from 17 to 18, Dolphins ever since. Career games, 9 played, 1 started, 42 snaps, 8.4 snaps per year. 8.4 snaps per year. 2021, he had 1 game played and 1 snap. And then he didn't have anything else. Right? 1 snap, he got a 60 overall, no pass blocking grade, and a 58.2 run blocking. And 28 snaps in 2020, he had a 42.7 overall, 71 pass blocking, and a 47.2 run blocking. And 12 snaps in 19, he had a 63.1 overall, 72.9 pass blocking, and a 59.3 run blocking. And his 1 snap of 2018, he had a 60 overall, nothing in pass blocking, and a 60 run blocking, and no snaps in 2017. And now we come to Keon Smith, the final guy that we have on the roster. He's a young guy. He was undrafted this past year in 2021, 1 year in the league. He's been with the Dolphins the entire time. Going into his 2nd year, he's cheap as an undrafted. That's like the base minimum, right, amount that you have to pay him or whatever, I think. 23 years. Actually, no, I think they paid him on the higher end because they thought he had potential or whatever. Either way, though, there's really nothing to talk about right now with this guy. He's just basically a developmental piece, but, definitely somebody you could bring in to training camp to see if he can work his way up that depth chart and onto the roster. So, yeah. And there you have it. I mean, that is a wrap, right? Like, that is a wrap. And that is the Miami Dolphins offensive line as it stands currently. Obviously not very good. They were the worst unit in the league this past season. The season before that, not very good. The season before that, not very good. The season before that, not very good. You got to go back to 2016 until you have our, the first example of a solid offensive line. And then they all got hurt, unfortunately. Or no, not that year. It was the year after that they started getting hurt. They start in 2017. They started off, Yeah, in 2017, they started off pretty good. Then they started getting hurt and everything. Anyway, whatever. It is what it is. We haven't had an offensive line in a while. And so there you have it. And you know what? I got to say, this video actually ended up being a bit longer than I was expecting it to be. I thought I was going to be able to breeze through this pretty quick, but there is a lot of information, even for these young guys that don't have very much information on them. But this is also why I'm going to be breaking up some of these videos, like the defensive and offensive line videos, because there are going to be so many players and so much information to parse through that the video is going to get kind of long. But anyway, again, lots of stuff. This is my first official, in-depth off-season video, starting with the deep dive into the Dolphins' current offensive line. Tomorrow, I will be doing my free agency video for right tackle free agents. The following day, I will be doing, so tomorrow being Sunday, I will do that video. And then Monday, I will be doing the free agency video for left tackles and centers, right? So check out those videos, man. It's going to be good. Like I said, a lot of information, and it's going to be very similar to this in the same, layout and the same style. There's going to be a ton of data to parse through. So we are going to look at it. We're going to go through it. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm super excited to finally be actually making these videos, although I still do got a ton of work, particularly when it comes to the draft, but I still do got some work to do when it comes to free agent stuff, especially because I still do need to compile and put together all the information for each of the other position groups of who's currently on the roster. So I still need to break down wide receivers, tight ends, running backs, and the entire defensive side of the ball in a similar fashion to how I did today. So anyway, let me wrap it up. Let me get out of here. Before I do, make sure you check out the Rave On Sports App, the new fan-driven sports app for all of your sports, whether it be basketball, baseball, football, college, whatever you like, they got it. And they are looking to enhance your game day experience with live play-by-play coverage, live chats with other fans and content creators like myself, while also providing you with an arena to dispute all of the terrible officiating. So make sure you check the links to that in the description box. And with that, I'm going to get out of here. Hope you guys appreciate my perspective. If you do, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts. Share my channel and videos with your friends and family. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comments section. And of course, as always, follow me on Twitter at DillonTartaro, as well as on Instagram at Dolphins_with_Dillon. And with that, I am out. I'll see y'all soon. Phins up.
7 seconds left. Tannehill will throw it. And this will end it after the shuttle. Miami runs around. Short quick. Over down. Gronkowski did not be able. Touchdown. Tannehill's right. Oh, miracle. Miraculous in Miami. Stills to Parker to Drake. And they held off the field. Unimaginable what has taken place here in South Florida. The Dolphins have done it. They keep their season alive. 69 yards. Wow. Pure joy. Miami wins it.